What's up, it's Jan back at it again with another nerdy bookish video. This is gonna be my April wrap up. Handy dandy stitch mug is here. Last month was one of my best reading months ever, primarily because it was one of my worst mental health months ever. So I read 30 books in 30 days, which is kind of crazy, but I accomplished a lot. I've done a reread. I read some books that I've been wanting to read for the longest time, aka Dracula. I found possibly my #1 read of 2023. So there's a lot going on here. I have a decent amount of the books physically, but I did read a few audiobooks and library books as well, so I'll just be inserting pictures as usual. If you're new here, I do my wrap-ups in the reread, rewrite, burn tag method. I've been doing it for a couple years now. I'm never looking back because wrap-ups were so boring for me to film until I came up with this. So basically, I put all the titles of the books I read on little slips of paper in this stitch mug that's been with me since the first time I've done this. I don't even use this mug to drink out of it. It's solely my wrap-up mug. I have all 30 titles in here. We're gonna do 10 rounds because we're gonna pull them out 3 at a time and basically say whether I would reread, rewrite, or burn the books. So essentially it's like fuck, marry, kill, but make it bookish is what I always tell people. Since this is like my best reading month of the year, we have a lot to cover, so we're gonna start with the recap really quickly. I do this every month. So like I said, 30 books. Number of pages, 6,565. Again, if you're new here, I try to read 100 pages a day. That's like my minimum daily goal. I only count my physical pages though, but I do count audiobooks in my, like, towards my Goodreads goal. Unless I'm following along physically as well and I can physically see the page numbers. I'm not about to do the math for the audiobook percentages on Libby and shit, so that's my explanation on that. It's never because I don't count audiobooks as books. Obviously, reading is reading is reading. Anyway, 6,565. Number of BIPOC authors, 8 out of 30, which is awful. Awful. Especially because I know like 4 of those are manga. What the fuck was that? I have no idea what that was. It came from my AC unit, so that's terrifying. That 4 of those are manga from the same series, so it was like kind of effortless, you know, if that makes sense. So gotta do better. I am doing better already in May because I'm trying to focus on Asian authors as much as I can. Anyway, best book. Adelaide, hands down. Adelaide by Genevieve Wheeler. This is a debut that's always compared to Normal People, and my friend Sarah from Sarah's Shelves compared it to Acts of Desperation, and just from the synopsis you can kind of tell that it's those vibes. And I love those sad girl books, you know, those lit fics that just hit the feels. And this is the book that could potentially be my #1 of the year because I sobbed. I'm about to edit the vlog where I read this, so hopefully it's up before you see this. I will link it down below if you're interested, but I was sobbing at the end. Joey can vouch for me. I had lo-fi in and he was like staring at me for 10 minutes just sobbing. I had no idea he was even looking at me because I was so immersed in this girl's life. There was a little part that I was not a big fan of. It involved something I really hate in books. If you know, you know, but it's okay. We look past it. It's fine. Basically about this 26-year-old who's just like lost in life and just acting impulsively and acting on feelings and feeling a lot of things for a lot of men. It's that type of book and I related to so much of it. Look at all these tabs. It's ridiculous. I knew from the get-go, as soon as I heard about this book, that it was gonna be one of my favorites of all time. It might be my #1. It's just so relatable. It's hard to read at some points, so do look up trigger warnings because there are a lot of them in here, like suicidal ideations, drug abuse, relationship abuse, things like that. So it was just so relatable, especially if you've been in toxic relationships or situationships. Like, if you want to feel seen, this is your gal. The worst book, Temper by Lane Fargo. So this was one of my blind date with the books that I got from Etsy. This is the one that I vlogged for my Patreon only. If you're curious to see my thoughts on this, it is gonna be in a vlog where Joey and I built a fort and I read this all weekend. This is the author of They Never Learn, which I loved. I think I gave that one 5 stars. So I was happy to see that when I opened the blind date with the book. Basically it's just like a mystery book. You tell these Etsy bestsellers. At least I got mine from Etsy, but I know Barnes & Noble does it sometimes and Half Price Books does it sometimes too. Local bookstores do it all the time. You get a book that is like a mystery book based on the genres you like, tropes you like. At physical bookstores, they put descriptions on the wrapping paper and stuff. It's all a mystery. It comes in this cute packaging if you buy it from Etsy. Little like stickers, stationery stuff. Yeah, it's super cute. So the experience itself, 10 out of 10. This book, however, was a 2-star, I believe. Oh no, I gave it 3 stars. I'm not sure why. This is set in Chicago, so there's red flag number 1 for me personally. And then it's also centered around the theater world, which is another red flag for me because I'm not into that. I can't relate. I was never a theater person. I mean, okay, that's a lie. I was in a couple plays in like middle school, but I never liked, aside from High School Musical, I never liked stories that involved around like the theater. City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert was really good too. I definitely highly recommend that, but not this. This had a lot of cheating and character stuff. It's a thriller, but like it's very slow, it's quiet, nothing, you know, there's no like big murders or plot twists or anything. I like the eeriness of the writing. That's probably why I gave it a 3, because I like Lane Fargo's writing style, but it is so forgettable. I didn't have any regrets about it being like blind date with the book. Glad I was familiar with the author, but if it were any other author, I would not have been interested in this at all. I know there were some intense parts, but like I said, it's so forgettable. I literally can't even remember the most intense parts. I think there was something with a knife. There are some trigger warnings in this as well. For someone who loves the theater scene and everything, I think you would like this, especially because Lane Fargo has a background in theater and she lives in Chicago. So it's believable. It's a believable setting and it's like realistic and everything. So, I mean, it's just not my type of book. So that was the worst book. I'm so rambly at these recaps. So I try to read 1 nonfiction a month and I've been good about it thus far since the beginning of last year. So I'm on a roll. The nonfiction I read for this month was Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. I listened to this on audio through Libby. I chose this one because it also fulfills the buzzword for the month for Kayla's Buzzwordathon, which is her annual reading challenge where she has like a word or category or whatever and you read titles with that word or whatever in the title. So the buzzword this month was emotions. So this is my second Jenny Lawson book. I gave this one 5 stars as well. I read Broken in the Best Possible Way last year and I really love that. I just love her voice. She has a lot of chronic illnesses and she talks about them in such a lighthearted manner, in a humorous way. Chronic illnesses and just like mental things as well. She's very relatable in the way she talks about anything that goes on in her life. Especially, there was this one chapter about rheumatoid arthritis, which I have, if you don't know. The day I was reading that chapter was a day that I was really in my feels about my arthritis, because I was like, there's gonna come a time in my life where I'm not gonna be able to do certain things that require like physical activity, you know? And it just like made me really fucking sad. And then I was listening to the chapter and I was sobbing on my way home from work. So that alone was like a 5-star experience because she just makes it so relatable and just makes you feel so seen. So I highly recommend her memoirs, her essays, whatever. The way she reads her audiobooks is just, it's just funny. She's very quirky. Her sense of humor is great. The way she interacts with her husband and the way he reacts to things she says. It's an uplifting memoir with like darker topics, but like she shares her experiences in a humorous way, which is nice. I also try to read at least 1 book from my Kindle because I do have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, so I like to utilize my Kindle as much as I can. I do have phases where I love reading on my Kindle at all times, but I always prefer physical books, so I have to like make the effort to make sure I use my Kindle at least once or twice a month. This month, or last month I guess, April, currently May 8th as I'm filming this. As of last month, I read 3 books on my Kindle: Cirque Berserk, Air Awakens, and Evergreen Chase. So Cirque Berserk is by, I can't remember the author, but I read this for my unmuted and unhinged sprints that I do with Joey over on Patreon. It's for all tiers. It's basically sprints, but we read a horror novella in one sitting and we stay unmuted as opposed to like regular sprints where everyone mutes themselves. And we play ambiance really softly and y'all will just hear us live react to this horror novella. And some are more visceral than others, but Cirque Berserk was a good one. I actually gave this one 4 stars, which was surprising for me because based on the cover, we were like, is this about killer clowns? Like, it's gonna be so dumb. But it was definitely something else that we weren't expecting, and it did get gory and and fun and just like creepy. That's a good one. I'll definitely be reading more, I think, from that series if Joey's down. I forgot what it's called, like Rewind and something series, but there's like a shit ton of them. Air Awakens by Elise Kova. I read this for Jodie's Patreon buddy read and I gave this one 3 stars. I will continue with the series. This is a fantasy romance type thing where she is this apprentice or something. I don't even know. She has powers and everyone who has powers in this are like powers of the elements. So like air, wind, fire, like that type of shit. I like that she was super bookish. Like I liked her personality in general. I just didn't feel the chemistry too much with the romance, and the banter was decent, but like the plot itself was all right. I mean, I'm interested to keep following this character just to see where it goes, and I know there's only like a couple books in the series, maybe it's a trilogy, I don't know, but I do enjoy Elise Kova's writing because it doesn't take too much brain power, but I prefer her Married to Magic series. I also want to try A Trial of Sorcerers because that one's like a bookish fantasy as well, but this one was all right. And then Evergreen Chase, I gave 3 stars, and that was a little short story. It was like 60 pages, probably less than that, and I actually paid for this. I usually don't buy ebooks, but this was the short story in the Shady Hollow series, which I just got into last month. Including this one, I read 3 of them total. I still have the 4th one from the library. My neck itches. This series was recommended to me by Rachel from Happy Go Lovely Sleeves, as well as a bunch of girlies who co-hosted sprints for Flowerathon. We were in this like group chat and I was like, listen, I need an audiobook, and they recommended Shady Hollow and I absolutely love it. But basically this series was pitched to me as Zootopia meets Gilmore Girls, and I was like, are you kidding? Sold. It's like cozy mysteries in this small ass town where animals talk and they have all these like human-like qualities. I was like, okay, this is gonna be so cheesy, but it was so cute. The characters just fit so well for what they did. So we follow this fox named Vera, who's a journalist for the town, and then like her boss is this skunk named BW, because you know, black and white, and they write for the paper, black and white newspapers, you know. There's a bear who's the chief officer named Orville, and then my favorite, I think, well, 2 of my favorites. One is Joe, the moose, who runs the diner, and he's like Luke from Luke's Diner in Gilmore Girls. And then I think the most clever is the Raven. I forgot her name. Starts with an L, I think. She owns the bookstore in the town that's right across from Joe's coffee shop, and it's called Nevermore Books. And like the Raven, Edgar Allan Poe, I was like, pfft. But yeah, so this one was just a short story. Someone steals something and then you figure out who did the damn deed. So that was cute and fun. 500 plus pages is like a soft goal for me, I always say. Like, it's just for me to try to like motivate myself to read longer books. And I did that this past month. I read Dracula finally, which is also obviously a classic. And that's another soft goal of mine, is see how many classics I can read in a year or whatever. So yeah, a 500 plus page classic. At least this edition is 500 plus pages. I have 7 editions now, so look out for my book haul because I hauled 3 of them recently. I thought it was justified now that I've actually read them, because I had 4 editions before I even read it. So this was such a success. This was such an accomplishment because I gave this 5 stars. I love this edition so much, and the tabs that I used matched perfectly. Can you even see? Yep. I'm so glad I enjoyed it because I have so many editions and I've been wanting to read this, and I feel like I've fulfilled my vampire girly credentials. It's just necessary for my brand because, you know, the Lair is vampire themed, my Patreon. So if you are interested, we do have a Dracula tier, a Carmilla tier, and a Bat tier, and all the links are down below. We do a bunch of spooky things. We talk about way more than just books. We get to know each other really well in that Discord for the top 2 tiers. I just love my little community so much, my little vamps. That's Dracula. And that is the end of my recap. So let us start with the first 3. All right, so we've got Ronan and the Endless Sea of Stars, which is a graphic novel, a graphic memoir that I got from the library. Flower Heart by Catherine Bakewell, and then Shady Hollow, which I got from the library. I would burn Ronan and the Endless Sea of Stars. Even though I gave this one 5 stars, it's a graphic memoir from the perspective of this dad whose son has Tay-Sachs. It's a very intense disease. I didn't really know what it was until this book. I only read this because one of the librarians at the library that I work at was doing a book discussion for this, and I wanted to promote it, and I was like, oh, another graphic novel to read. And I didn't think I would like this as much as I did because, you know me and babies, like, we don't get along. So, but the humor in this, surprisingly, existed. I was like, this is such a heavy ass topic and it's supposed to be really fucking sad, and it was, but it also had humor in it and it was really good. But I think I would burn it because, like, you know, I just picked it up on a whim. It wasn't on any type of TBR. I never heard of it until this librarian was having the book discussion for it. I didn't attend the book discussion or anything, but I read it. The art style was cool too, but I wouldn't reread it. I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone because it was really fucking sad. But if you are looking for a graphic memoir to hit the feels and you want to learn what Tay-Sachs is, I guess I could recommend this to you, but just beware, it is really sad. I would reread Shady Hollow. I gave it 4 stars just because it's a cozy mystery. I mean, it's not that deep, you know, but it was a cute, fun time. But I really, really enjoyed it. Like, this is like a high 4. I would reread it because it was quick. It was fun getting to know all the characters and their role in this small town. And the mystery itself was pretty good as well. It just took me by surprise. So would reread that. And then Flower Heart, I gave 4 stars as well. I really enjoyed this. I read this for Flowerathon, first of all, which was hosted by Rachel from Happy Go Lovely Sleeves, as mentioned earlier. And in my vlog, I pitched this as, well, it's pitched as for fans of Margaret Rogerson, but also I think if you liked This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron and The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin, I think you would love this as well. This is also pitched as a cottagecore fantasy, which I loved. This cover grew on me. At first I was like, that looks so cheesy, but I like it. And I also compared it to Winx Club, so that sold it to some people in my comments, apparently. Basically, it's about this girl who has like plant magic and it's like out of her control. Like, she doesn't know how to keep it tame, and then she like hurt her father in the process. And so this guy who has a higher status in the magic realm, I guess, used to be friends with her, like really close friends in their childhood. Now she like needs his help to like help her dad. They made this like deal and shit, and like it was cute, it was wholesome. It's not 5 stars because it's definitely very YA. I would probably rewrite some of the like kind of cringy moments, but it wasn't as cringy as I thought it would be. It needed a little bit more development. I mean, it is a debut, but for what it is, I mean, if you take it at face value and you're here for a cozy cottagecore fun time, then you'll get what you want. And that's what I thought going into it as well. I feel like it was a little bit too juvenile at some points for my liking, so I would rewrite those parts, but otherwise solid 4 stars. Next 3. Beach Read by Emily Henry, which was a reread. The first time I read this was 3 years ago when it first came out. Cirque Berserk, which I just talked about, and then The Girl from the Other Side Volume 3, which is a manga series. I would obviously reread Beach Read again. I love this. This was 5 stars both times. I cried both times, and it hit even harder now that, okay, let me be sappy for a moment. It hit even harder this time around because I'm in such a healthy relationship with my boyfriend Joey. It was funny because the reason I picked this up in the first place was because I remember this specific quote about like the little things that the guy wanted to do with the girl in terms of, you know, watching her read and doing laundry with her, like all these little like mundane things. And I was like, I have that now. So I wanted to reread it and just like be in my feels. And then I saw the dedication and I wish I got my reaction for it, but my jaw freaking dropped and I annotated all over it because it literally says, "For Joey. You are so perfectly my favorite person." And I was like, oh my god, like the reason I picked it up was because of Joey. And then yeah, so would reread this. Basically, if you haven't heard, it's about this woman January and this dude named August, and they met in college. She goes to her dad's lake house after he passed away. They're both authors. She's a romance author, he's a literary fiction author. They both are suffering through writer's block, so they're in this like beachy area, like these beach houses, you know, they interact and then they switch genres to like spice things up a bit, maybe gain some inspiration from different perspectives. And just the quotes in this are just so good. And what I really love about this is that the cover is so deceiving. Like, it's not just a light-hearted beach read. There's so much depth to each of these characters and their backstories, why they are the way they are. It's in this small town where everyone knows everybody, and it's just so fucking good. I haven't read Happy Place yet. I am going to this month and do a dedicated vlog for it because people on Instagram asked me to. And I still think this is gonna top it. I just do. Even though that one's a second chance romance, which is my favorite trope of all time, this one just has a special place in my heart, especially now that the dedication, it's just, would reread this. I would burn Cirque Berserk. I have no desire to read it again. I don't care enough to rewrite it. It was just a one-time thing. It was a fun time. I know what happens. So, I mean, it's a horror novella, an extreme horror novella, I believe. If I wanted those vibes again, I'd read any other book in that series. It's this like creepy carnival and these kids go to it and explore and shit goes down. That's the premise. And then The Girl from the Other Side Volume 3. I guess I'd have to rewrite it. I don't know how, but that was my favorite. I've read 7 now from that series, 7 out of 12. And the third one was definitely my favorite because of this one argument scene, and it was just so wholesome and just so funny. I don't know how I would rewrite it. It's hard to rewrite a manga because they're so quick and, you know, obviously super illustrated, like there aren't many words to rewrite. Maybe like the aftermath of that argument part just kind of dragged because that was like the peak, which I loved, and then the rest of it I was like, I just want it to be over. So I don't know. I don't remember the ending. I just remember that argument scene between the monster and the little girl. So basically this series is about this dark creature who takes care of this little girl, Shiva, who he finds, and they just have all these things go on. And now by volume 7, things are unraveling about this like curse and the way it affects humans who aren't cursed yet. And then there's like some sort of religion involved, which I'm not a huge fan of. It's hard to distinguish which one's which, and it's gonna suck because I read 5 of them in this month. So I apologize in advance for when these come up because they're pretty much just gonna be like, I'd probably burn them because I could just read my favorite volumes in the series, you know, or any other manga that exists, because it's just a cutesy manga. Like y'all know my favorite manga is anything by Junji Ito, so this is like less horror, more cutesy, but it also like balances darkness with the cuteness of this little girl and like her innocence and wholesomeness and everything. So yeah, I really like that series. We're gonna move on. Spy Family Volume 4, which is another manga, cutesy manga series that I'm in the middle of. Got that from the library. Tripping Arcadia by Kit Mayquist, which was my full moon book club pick for March, but I read it in April because that's when the live show was. Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. Okay. I don't even remember what happened in Spy Family Volume 4, so I'll probably burn that. With manga series, especially that long, like it's just all one story in my brain, so I can't, you know, determine where one volume starts and ends in the story, if that makes sense. Junji Ito's like story collections, that's a different situation. Like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean. So I would burn that, but I am still enjoying Spy Family as a series, as a whole. That one's definitely more cutesy as opposed to like the dark side of the spectrum. If you haven't heard, I mean, it's blowing up right now, but basically it's this family that's pretending to be a family in order to fulfill this mission. There's a spy, a telepath, and an assassin, and they all just have to pretend to be this happy family. It's cute. They got a dog at some point, and that was fun. It's like this huge ass fluffy polar bear looking thing. I don't remember what volume 4 was, but I am gonna continue. I think there are like 8 or 9 out right now translated into English, so we'll continue that, but I would burn that out of these 3. Tripping Arcadia I would reread. I really enjoyed this. The writing is exquisite from the very start, and I liked the storyline as a whole. This basically deals with like drugs and like plants and herbs and stuff, but this girl works for this super rich family as this one guy's like caregiver. I don't know how much is in the synopsis, but there's a whole lot of classism going on and just rich people's secrets and drama. This is pitched as like a queer Great Gatsby reimagining. It has all the gothic vibes. It says a gothic novel on the front, which I love. Probably like my favorite genre is gothic fiction. So I'll just link the live show discussion down below because my dedicated vlogs for my full moon book club picks are now just Patreon for all tiers. So if you're interested, again, links are down below for the lair. I would love to have you. But yeah, I'll link the live show down below if you want more of my thoughts. But I would reread this for sure. And fun fact, Kit Mayquist is S.T. Gibson's A Dowry of Blood's author, fiance. So fun facts with Jan. And then Nothing to See Here I would rewrite. So I listened to this on audio all in one sitting on my way home from Indiana. That's like a 3.5-hour drive, and it was like perfect timing. I finished it as I was parking and I had like 5 minutes left, so I just chilled in my car when I got home. And this is about this babysitter nanny thing who takes care of these twins who literally spontaneously combust in flames when they're angry. So like Jack from The Incredibles. That part was entertaining, and the like wholesomeness of the kids was entertaining. I always forget to say my ratings, I'm so sorry. I gave this 3 stars. I gave Spy Family Volume 4 3 stars as well, just so we're clear. Tripping Arcadia I gave 4 stars. Okay, going back to Nothing to See Here. So this is a found family trope. If you know me, you know that the found family trope is a hit or miss, and this one was kind of a miss. I just like wasn't into it. I always compare found family trope books to House of the Cerulean Sea, and I still think this one was definitely better in my opinion. I just like couldn't connect to the characters. I wasn't feeling the story. I was only looking forward to the parts where the twins went up in flames because that concept is just so hilarious to me. Otherwise, very forgettable book. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it had a couple good quotes that I was like, whoa, that hits, but like, can I tell you them off the top of my head? Nope. That's the verdict on that. The next three we have Autumn of the Grimoire by J.L. Vampa, The Maid by Nita Prose, which I listened to via audio, and ooh, nope, that's the wrong book. They're both yellow in book of the month. So The Bodyguard by Cathryn Center. All right. So I would burn The Maid because it was like a cozy thriller via audio. I gave that one 4 stars because I liked, again, the wholesomeness of it, and I did like the storyline, and I liked the audiobook experience. But like, would I reread it? No. There are like problematic elements to it. I know Daryan has very strong feelings about it and how the main character was portrayed, but in general I liked the humor and the innocence and the different characters in it. And oh, the end, we find out this thing about her and the grandma that was really fucking sad and intense. So I think that's what gave that 4th star for me. Other than that, I would not reread it. I'm glad I didn't purchase it because I was really debating it at one point when it first came out as a book of the month pick. I think it's a book of the month pick. Am I making that up? I don't know. Whenever it first came out, the hold list at the library was insane. So I'm glad I finally read it, but I would burn it. I would absolutely reread The Bodyguard. This was such a surprise. I actually didn't read this copy. I listened to it only on audio, and then I bought myself a physical copy because it's just that good. I just picked it up because it was available on Libby, and I loved the audiobook. It was so easy to listen to, so quick. Basically, it's about this female bodyguard who's a bodyguard to this celebrity. It's fake dating, which I was like iffy about because that's also hit or miss for me. But this one was absolutely a hit, and things with celebrities too are a hit or miss for me, but this one like did it so well, and the character arc and character growth for both main characters, it was just so well paced and well done. There was this one part at the end that was like kind of jarring because it like took you out of the story a little bit, like the little twist in the 3rd act conflict. Wow, I can't speak. It was still 5 stars for me. I don't even care. Like, I loved the romance in this. I will reread this and I will tab the shit out of it because it has so many quotes about like self-love and learning how to love yourself as well as others, and learning how the people you love. Does that make sense? Like learning the ways other people love and like learning how to adapt to that while also loving them the way you know how to love. Take a shot every time I said the word love. Yeah, I just love this so much. I was swooning, squealing, screaming, crying. It was just so fucking good. It was so good. I highly recommend, and I do want to read more of Cathryn Center's books. I just hauled another one of her books, Happiness for Beginners, which I've never heard anyone talk about. I just don't like how her covers look. That's why I didn't pick this from the book of the month when it was a pick, because I don't like this cover. I don't like any of Cathryn Center's covers because they all look the same with the flowers and shit, but I just love this so much. This could potentially be in my top 10 of 2023, but I don't know. Probably not, but definitely my top romances ever. I love this so much. And then I would rewrite Autumn of the Grimoire. I just wanted fall vibes all throughout. This is so weird to say, but I feel like this almost had too much plot that I didn't really care for. I just wanted the fall witchy vibes. So I would rewrite it in that sense. It definitely accomplished it because it has a lot of atmospheric elements, and especially in the beginning, just chapters of like the fall vibes, the autumnal, I can't think of any other words besides vibes and atmosphere. I'm so sorry. There was a big lull in the middle where I was just bored because there's like this marriage of convenience, or what is it called? Fated mates type thing, because there's this like prophecy. I guess not mates, like fated marriage. I don't know. There's this prophecy, and one of the witch sisters go to this castle and has to marry this guy based on this prophecy. He's like so in love with her and everything, and it's so cute, some of the things he says to her. If you like Hocus Pocus, you'll love this book, and I will be reading the 2nd book called Winter of the Wicked. I just wouldn't buy it physically. I'm just gonna read it on my Kindle. But the end, like the last third of it, that's when I started getting intrigued by the plot, because it talked about some like backstory of the main characters, and it was intense. There was this one part with like horses involved, and I was like, Like, that's brutal. I gave this 4 stars at the end, but it took me so long to get through. But yeah, I would rewrite that middle, lol. Also, side note, when I say I want to rewrite something, I never would, because I could never write it better. This is all in theory, y'all, okay? Just making that clear. I grabbed like 17, what the fuck? Okay, let's see. Cold Clay by Juno Black, which is the second Shady Hollow book. Girl from the Other Side Volume 6, y'all already know what I'm probably gonna say about that. And then Adelaide, okay, obviously reread Adelaide, already talked up a storm for this one. Cold Clay, I would rewrite because I don't want to burn it, because I like that one too. I gave Cold Clay 3 stars, yeah, 3 stars, because I really like the first one better, but there was this one little reveal and like the fact that led to that reveal that was so like fascinating to me. So I really like that aspect. There was this one character that kind of pissed me off, but you were supposed to not like this animal. So we're just gonna call it that. We're gonna call it that. I think also this one was a little bit more obvious than the first one for reasons that I'm not gonna say, because then you'll figure it out easily if you're gonna read this book. But yeah, make the mystery less obvious and change this certain character just a little bit. Which means I would burn The Girl from the Other Side Volume 6. This was the last book I read in April. I was like, I'm at 29 books in 30 days. I just need to get a manga out of the way and just feel like I accomplished something in my life. So yeah, this was my 30th book of the month, which I loved, but gave this one 4 stars. So this one was definitely one of my favorites, I believe. I couldn't tell you why. The only one I vividly remember is Volume 3. Besides this one and that one, I gave the rest of them 3 stars. So the 4-star ones, clearly there was something there, but I would burn that because you know. All right, the next 3. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. Thank you so much to Tiffany, one of my patrons, for getting me a physical copy of this, because I did read this from the library at first and I was like, I love it so much. So Air Awakens by Elise Kova, which we already talked about, and then Evergreen Chase, which again we already talked about. So would reread this. Obviously I wanted the physical copy. I love this so much. This is by Jessie Q Satanto, who's the author of Dial A for Aunties, and I like that duology. I read both of them. I laughed a bunch and I thought the Asian culture was done really well and everything, and the plot was just like ridiculous, over the top, but like still really good and entertaining. This one is about this old lady who owns a tea shop in Chinatown, and she's just fucking hilarious. I love her so much. And basically this is a cozy mystery. She finds this dead guy in her tea shop, and then she meets all these people who come to her tea shop, and she keeps track of them as suspects, and she's like taking the initiative because she knows like the police wouldn't do as well as she could, I guess. So she just tries to solve this murder, and I didn't realize you would get the perspectives from all these people that she encounters. You learn the backstories of them, you learn why they were in the tea shop at the first place, you learn all their motives and secrets they've kept, and then they all connect one way or another at the end. And this also kind of has a found family trope in it, and this one was definitely a hit for me. I keep unintentionally picking up found family books and it's getting old, but this one was so good. The humor is top fucking tier. I laughed out loud so many times. I'm so grateful for Tiffany for getting me a physical copy, because I will be rereading this and annotating, because it does have really good quotes as well. It hit the feels at some points. Yeah, I would highly recommend. This just came out this year, so if you're looking for a good cozy mystery, especially by an Asian author, here you go. Air Awakens, I would rewrite, just develop the romance a little bit more, like I said, because it was like lacking chemistry. Evergreen Chase, I would burn just because it was literally 50 something pages or whatever. It was just super short and I don't need to read it again. I still have Mirror Lake in that series. If I wanted the same vibes, the 5th book, I guess, is coming out later this year, so I don't need that one. I mean, it was a fun time. It was set during Christmas, so it gave all the Christmas vibes, but the story itself, again, super predictable, way more predictable than the first and the second. But like, obviously, what would you expect from like a super short story, right? But still good. I gave Evergreen Chase 3 stars. I think I already said that earlier. Okay, this is so exhausting. I want to film my book haul after this, but I don't know. The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 5. Two Wrongs Make a Right by Chloe Lees. Tombs by Junji Ito. Again, would burn The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 5, just cause, again. You know I would always reread Junji Ito. I gave this one 3 stars though. This wasn't my favorite at all from his story collections, but I own it. It's one of his newest books. Not a lot of the stories did anything for me, but he's always a fun time. I will always read and reread his books. I want to collect all his books. This is one of the few that I own, and some of them were creepy as always, and the illustrations are fucking wild as always. What the fuck is going on there? It's 3 stars, like I said, and that's rare for me to give a Junji Ito collection, but it is what it is. But I would still reread it. Two Wrongs Make a Right. I listened to this via audio. Love Chloe Leese. I love the representation in her books, the diversity in her book. My favorite by her so far is Only When It's Us, which is the first in the Bergman Brothers series. This is a new series, and it's like her longest novel, I believe, so far, because I think the Bergman Brothers are technically novellas, but I could be wrong. I don't know. But this one is so forgettable. Oh, this one's also fake dating. It's this like quirky, bookish guy and this like tattooed woman. They met like online or something. Or no, they knew each other in person and then they met online, and their friends like tricked them into going on this date, and then they're just like, we should just fake date to make them feel better. And then obviously it becomes real at some point. I think it had the usual good discussions about autism and like personality, why characters are the way they are, that all the Chloe Leese books have. So I did appreciate that. I gave Two Wrongs Make a Right 3 stars. The chemistry wasn't as good as the ones that I've read in the Bergman Brothers, so I would rewrite it in that sense, I guess. If someone asked me for a Chloe Leese recommendation, this would not come to mind at all. I even liked the Christmas novella better than this one, and I'm not a Christmas book girly, but the mistletoe motive I liked. I've read like, I don't know, 5 of her books now, 5 or 6 maybe, something like that. So this one wasn't my favorite, but I'm glad I didn't spend money on it. I'm glad I just listened to it kind of mindlessly via audio. Almost done. Oh, The Girl from the Other Side Volume 2. Which I gave 3 stars. That one was not my favorite at all. I remember because it was only the 2nd book, but then the 3rd one came along and I was like, wow, okay, ready to continue the series again. And then we have Days of Blood and Starlight by Lady Taylor, which is the sequel to Daughter of Smoke and Bone. And then Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Jillian McAllister. This is actually Joey's copy. I listened to this on audio and I followed along for some of it. He's almost done with it. There's his bookmark. He has that much left. I would burn The Girl from the Other Side. I would reread this even though it's a fucking chonker and I was confused half the time, and I much preferred volume 1 book 1. This one I gave 3 stars. For a lot of it I was so fucking frustrated because I had no idea what was going on, and like my favorite characters were like barely there. I think my favorite characters were actually there for a necessary amount of time, but like the main character Karu was like barely there for a lot of the book. Towards the end she was, I think. But I just really hope the 3rd one goes out with a bang. I still have the novella to read, which follows my favorite characters, Zuzana and Mick. The Night of Cake and Puppets one, I'm so excited to get to that one. So that was my sole motivation to finish this book. And plus I have the 3rd in the series as well. I have the box set. I really love Lady Taylor's writing though, so I would reread this and see, especially after finishing the series, if I would have a different perspective on it and if I would have a better grasp on everything in the world and stuff and what the fuck was going on in this book. But yeah, the first book, stellar, 5 stars. This one, not so much, and it sucked because it's so big, but I had the audiobook, thank God. So that's what helped me get through this. I read like 300 pages of this in a day for a 24-hour readathon, I think, for Patreon. So that was fun. And then I would rewrite this. I gave this one 4 stars solely because the concept is just so mind-blowing to me that an author can write chronologically backwards like this. Because basically this girl finds out her son committed a crime, and then she wakes up the next day and it's like her life is going backwards in time, and then it like jumps around and stuff, and I was like, I just simply could never even fathom like let alone writing this book, but also just like organizing the timeline in my head. I simply could not, you know. I mean, the twists, there were a couple twists that were pretty good, pretty well executed, but otherwise it kind of dragged for some parts, so I would just like, you know, cut out some of this. I feel like some parts were just like dragged on, so I would omit a few pages from this. This could definitely be shorter. It's 370-ish pages. I think we could have done it in like 320. I would say cut out like 50 pages of this, but it was really good. I usually agree with Reese's book club picks. So next 3. Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson, which we talked about. The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. I don't know, I've heard it said different ways. Temper by Lane Fargo. Would burn this. We already talked about it. It's the worst book of the month. I would reread Furiously Happy because I already talked about it. Like that chapter about rheumatoid arthritis really hit. That book made me laugh out loud a lot of the time, and I feel like since I was at work for most of the audiobook, I was distracted, so I would reread it again and listen to the parts I missed. The Luminaries, I gave this 3 stars, which is really sad. I'm gonna keep it on my shelves because I love this cover. Like, this is one of my favorite covers of last year's releases, but This was just so underwhelming. I had high expectations because it's about this like creepy forest and these like nightmares coming out left and right. And there's this girl who like wants to join the Luminaries, which is the ancient order that protects the town and the rest of humanity from the monsters and nightmares that rise in the forest of Hemlock Falls every night. You find out that there are like these family secrets that were going on. I would read the sequel. I believe this is going to be a series of some sort, so I would continue. I feel like the second one would be better, especially if the author's writing develops more. So basically this girl goes through all these tasks and shit in this creepy forest. I think like the missions and the objectives were done really well and executed pretty well. It was just like, I don't know how to explain it. There were some like really juvenile parts that screamed YA, if that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like my reading taste has not been getting along with that type of writing anymore, especially in a fantasy that I had high hopes for. I would recommend this for beginner fantasy readers, which honestly I still consider myself as, but it was just like, it was easy on my brain, which I enjoyed, but it wasn't like riveting enough to where I'd be like, yes, read this immediately, you know? But gorgeous cover. Okay, last three. We've got Dracula. I don't know why I said it so dramatically like that. The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 4. And then The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, which yes, I did read. And this is the first book I read in the vlog. Or no, the second book maybe? Would reread Dracula, of course, obviously. You know, I have 7 editions to choose from. So burn The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 4, because we're gonna move on from the reasons of that. And then I would rewrite The Fine Print. So I gave this 3 stars. I read this for a vlog, like I said, reading book talk books that are compared to my 5-star reads. This was compared to a few things, like Love in Other Words. I don't see similarities between my 5-star reads that were compared to this, but Sid from Sid Bookworm is the one who convinced me to buy this when I went to get my tattoo and visit her and everything in Indiana. So I bought this from her local indie bookstore because I was like, okay, fine. If I'm gonna buy this, I'm gonna support local, because like, even though it's on KU, like the flop of this and like the way this paperback feels in my hand literally made me want to buy the entire series, and I did. I bought the other 2 in the series. Okay, it's fine. Shamelessly bought. No, shamefully, actually. I shamefully bought that. I was so anxious going to Barnes & Noble buying those, which is dumb, but I just like, I don't know, it's so dumb. But I did buy the rest of the series, and I have higher hopes for the rest of the series because I gave this one 3 stars. This is like the epitome of addictive. The writing style is very addictive. The plot, the way it's formatted, like it has a lot of messages between the 2 main characters. The chapters are pretty short. It was a very quick read. I'm interested in the second and third because the second one is Marriage of Convenience and the third one is Second Chance Romance, which is my favorite romance trope, which I think I mentioned earlier. This one was Grumpy Sunshine, and I really like the female main character. This series is called Dreamland Billionaires, okay? Like that in and of itself, I'm like, what the fuck? And I don't like books that are centered around money and people with money like that. Like, if you're gonna do pretentious characters, it has to be like Atlas 6 type of level, you know? But basically this is Disneyland. That's how people will describe this dreamland situation. The guy is like trying to be the CEO after their grandfather passes away, but he has all these tasks. Each brother has these tasks to complete, and then enter Zara, who's this younger, wants to be this creator thing in Dreamland, and there's a romance and she submits a drunk proposal, and then yeah, I'm so enthused by this book, as you can tell. But I would rewrite it in, oh, you know what? I didn't like the sex scenes in this book. It was just very vanilla. I wanted to skim so badly. Like, I don't remember really what I said, but just, I'll link the vlog down below because I will be editing it, but just know I would rewrite some of these parts. Oh, the end. I hated the ending. I hated it so fucking much because I think it was in the epilogue. This thing happens, and if you know me, you'll know why I hated it. So I would rewrite that part. Go with that. Okay, that is all. Those are all 30 books that I read last month. Let me know if you've read any of these as well and agree with my opinion, disagree with my opinions. I don't care. If you made it to the end of this video, let's put a pink heart emoji in the comments down below to match Adelaide. Thank you so much for watching. Hope y'all had a great day. Stay safe and stay spooky always. And I'll see y'all in my next video. Bye.